Okay, right. Well, we're going to have a short panel discussion on the future of distribution. Maybe it gives a chance for you to ask some of the questions that you didn't get an opportunity in other sessions, either during today or maybe during yesterday as well. And I think we've got to the point we're going to get Paul Louis is going to come back up on stage, having talked about the failure environment earlier on today. And Matthias is going to rejoin us. And I think Cornell Dixon from Backbase is also due to join us on the stage. And maybe we can end up getting a chair for each of you. Or do you want to stand? You'd prefer to stand.
Let us. Working?
So whilst the others are coming up, then let's just get a view on this future. I mean, you've talked about the future to some extent already, Matthias, but having listened to, I know you listened to some of the sessions that have been here over the last day and a bit. What's your feeling in terms of the direction of travel? Do you feel confident that the banks are embracing the change that is demanded, or is there an element of skepticism?
There's a big element of skepticism, and this is what you wanted to hear.
No, that's what I would be saying.
Yeah,
right? That's
exactly.
my view. So
I'm
just hoping somebody else in the panel agrees
This is
with
what
me.
you in England or in Great Britain would call lipstick on the pig, and we are living.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and we are living in this danger that all what we talk about, the shiny technology, and we did not really go into deep what digitalization really means, like end-to-end processes and so on. We're going to end up in a discussion whether this is lipstick on the pig only, and it remains to be a pig. Nothing wrong with pigs, don't get me wrong, but it's
This is when you see people leaving and going because they feel insulted by you.
Throwing pork chops at me. No, but so this is we are living in the scenario that might be lipstick on the pig. So it's not really changed to me. Still have you. See, we cut you off.
Yeah. Oh, young one.
You're wired up.
It works. Good. No, I was going to agree. I mean, I come from a technology company. I don't have a software background. I apologize for everybody in the room. I was actually a lawyer, right? That's bad choice. That's an equally hated.
We'd like to thank you for the contribution.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
an equally hated profession. No, but working for a tech company. I mean, honestly, I want everybody here to use our software, right? As much as you probably want everybody to use Fido. But at the same time, if you don't have the right culture in the bank, you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter about how much you digitize, you're going to fail. It's that simple.
But it is that learning from failures that you talked about today.
And that's the thing, but banks don't do that. The boards will
they
never
don't admit failure to start with. They're not good at admitting failure.
I've been in front of boards and said exactly that. When have you failed? Because I don't want to do that again.
But this would be now really to Paul the question, and I was too shy and actually didn't have the app on, so that was really in the world of compliance, actually. In a world of regulators. I want you to join me when I would have the next regulator talk with the joint supervisory team of the ECB, and I would say, listen, be happy, I did a failure. They just kill me. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? They just kill me.
That's the point. I mean, everyone can look at the banks, but it's the whole ecosystem. I do also work in pharmaceutical industries. I do work with the Ministry of Justice and Safety in the Netherlands. And it is also the response that the organizations get when they, for instance, when they fail. Actually, I'm a little bit less pessimistic. I joined ABN AMRO in 1998, and the organization is now, and there's only one, but I know more banks. You cannot compare to what we have had 20 years ago. So, right. I think that should also be acknowledged that dramatic changes have been made. And the way we and Holland is, in some extent, ahead of some other countries in terms of user-friendliness of bank products. It takes 0 seconds nowadays to get money from one place to the other place. It costs almost nothing. If you compare it to 20 years ago, where we still had checks, and there are still countries out there with checks. I think it's not nothing that has happened. So that's the first thing I want to mention. On the other hand, I see opportunities that not are being used. As an example, the word blockchain has not been mentioned today, which is, I think, a compliment. But it is, but the whole thing of smart contracting and is there. And one of the biggest moves, change I see, is the transformation from what we call customer relationship management, that was a lot of talking about today, to what we call customer managed relationships. And there are tools out there. As an example, I just show you an example. Of course, you cannot see it in the back, but we have here a little tool. It's called Dapper. And it is made by a foundation called Key. And Key is a foundation that is focusing on people, and as you said, managing their own data. And as an example, I have here a contact book. And it looks like an ordinary contact book, but the point is, I can connect you. There's a QR code. You can scan it, and at that moment, you have a subscription to my data. If I change my data here, it will be changed in your contact book.
Interesting.
So I control what is in your data book, and I think I don't have contact with him anymore. I removed, I break the link. Now, I can do the same with my bank. So this is my digital identity. This is my digital me. That's how they profile themselves. Now, the banks could play a very important role because they also check identities of people in issuing this virtual identity. And then suddenly interesting things can happen. Just 1 minute. Suppose I'm going to, let's say, a company we all know, IKEA. We are IKEA online, and I see a table. And I say, I like that table. Then IKEA is asking, who are you? And I say, well, that's not of your business. The only thing you want to sell me a table. Yeah, but do you have money? I say, okay, you can check my information that I share with my bank via you. I create a link to my bank, you can check the bank. Okay, the guy has money. Where do you live? So, okay, are you going to sell, to bring this table to me? No, we have a distributor. Then I will share my data with the distributor. So I give, okay, so everyone gets exactly the information.
What's the name again? I have the unfortunate situation, I cannot make a note now.
No, the foundation is called QIY.
QIY.
But now this is happening. Now I'm coming to the point. Now, IKEA says, okay, you bought this table. We also have very nice chairs. Can we show them to you? I said, that's okay, you can show them to me, but I now want 10% discount. Because instead of Google selling my data to them, or a bank or any other person who has nothing to do with my data, I'm trading my own data. I'm mining my own business. Now,
interesting.
And this is, the concept is already there. What I say now to the banks, why don't you jump on it?
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. These are things that this is the future, and then banks can become very relevant. They sell their core competence, identification of people, trust in people. So it's all about trust. Now, what I see is that these developments are taking place, and what I'm now waiting for are banks who understand this, and they don't necessarily need to embark on this one, but on the concept. Now, here is the future of banking.
Yeah, but I maybe just on that point, if I think of my sister, who's a bit younger than myself, I know I'm young, but she's a bit younger.
She must be very young.
She's a bit younger. but also her friends or my cousins, they don't care. And that's the thing, that you also need to educate the populace to be able to do that.
They don't care because they have never experienced anything.
Exactly.
Because I know a lot of young people, and some of them have been more or less digitally raped. They do care.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so as well. But what I want to pick up out of this, what we did not speak, and actually it crossed my mind. I had one slide about blockchain. I skipped it today.
Thank you.
But digital identity, I think, is something banks are absolutely in the pole position. We need to KYC our customers. Most of us, we see that to be a threat. This KYC stuff, very expensive and so on and so forth. By the way, photograph is not compliant in Germany of passport. It must be a video. So N26 had to re-identify a lot of customers. So why not making gold out of what is, once life delivers you lemons, make lemonade. Yeah. So the lemonade would be really that we are a trusted gatekeeper for digital identities.
And the other thing I see as a good development is, you mentioned compliance, the explosion of regulatory things. I had a discussion with my CEO when I left ABN AMRO. He said, Paul, listen, the whole bank shrank from 140,000 people to 20,000 people. The only thing that exploded was my compliance department. Yeah, exactly. And I said, listen, Gerrit, this is organized stupidity. Because at the end of the day, compliance is all about rules. And you can model the rules. You can program the rules, but you need a language for that. Well, these languages do exist. I already know 3 companies who developed a language for compliance. And if you are very good in compliance, it becomes a competitive edge. So I talk about competitive compliance. Compliance is a strategic asset. Those companies, and I think they're also the traditional banks are in the best position. That's why the fintech has a lot of problems in taking over the classical banks, because this regulatory issue is a very difficult nut to crack. And I think if the banks become very smart and they use the right technologies and the right models to deal with compliance, they might have a very successful future.
But that's like the Amazon model, right? You know, they started off as a bookstore, and then they ended up building all the server infrastructure, and they're like, oh, we have spare capacity, let's sell it.
Exactly, and we realized that we started off with transactions as a service, and at the end of the day, we offered compliance as a service.
Yeah. And the end of the game is, I recently spoke to somebody, he was talking about a company as a service.
Yeah.
And that's what the bank will be.
Yeah.
It's just a configuration task. It configures the compliance function, the customer interfaces, the IT. And at the end of the day, it's just a game of configuration.
Which then means the discussion we had, no moderation now, please. That means, no, sorry.
Oh,
When you finish your sentence.
He's still there.
That means
He's still there.
This is why he doesn't get a fee, right?
Which then means that actually the customer ownership will definitely not be in the bank anymore.
No.
Right? This is something we discussed before. The customer ownership will not be in the bank. It will be in with the one who owns the customer anyhow.
Yeah, but nobody owns the customer. The customer is owning the customer.
Exactly.
Okay, fine.
That's what I mean with the
data.
customer-managed relationship.
Yeah.
I was once in a discussion with an insurance company. They had an event for the customers, and I was supposed to give a lecture there, and also the intermediaries were there. And they had a dispute on, yeah, but it's my customer. No, it's my customer. I said, wait a minute, you talk about me. You are my supplier, and if you go on like this, you will not be my supplier anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
Can I just go back? We've got a couple of questions up here from the customer, right? First one's about this gap between the American and European banks. Why do you think US is not delivering when they are very good on working on client expectations?
I would not buy the thesis in the question, you know, because it's saying that American are good in delivering.
Implying that they're very good on working on client expectations.
So I experienced American banks to be extremely offline-ish, so to say. There are some maybe very good in digital development. The huge majority I experienced to be extremely Middle Ages. Surprisingly, in the home of digitalization, so we think, but it isn't. Look, I think America, the US is the last country which is developing and processing checks, isn't it? Yeah. You know, what are we talking about?
Now take photos of them rather than actually
Last year I was in the States, and you come there and you see indeed this. I arrived at San Francisco and you saw all these great tech companies, but I rented a motorhome, and every 5,000 miles you have to change the oil, and they're afraid that you don't do that. So they say, we will reimburse you. Okay. So suddenly, one moment I had to change the oil. I went to a garage, and it took about 2-3 minutes for them to change the oil. It took me 45 minutes to fill in the papers. Yeah. And it's the same country where you see all these high-tech, I was very surprised.
Huge administration.
But it's weird. So we have a few offices in the States, and when we've had to pay rent, I remember speaking with our CEO, when we had to pay rent for that, we had to pay rent in a check. We went, but we'll wire the account. We'll wire the money to your account. We'll just, no. I want a check. So I think it's also, I don't know, there's also an education element there.
But that's retail banking. If you go to investment banking, then we talk about different things.
That's right.
And then they have all these algorithms, the foreign exchange.
Didn't Donald Trump, though, also work in checks in terms of one stage when he was sort of being either refunding or whatever?
Yeah. I would check the signature if I was looking at the check.
But see, this is also why PayPal is an American concept. You know, again, it starts at the problem. And the problem also, this is why kind of home delivery channels are an American concept, because in this flyover countries, there is no distribution hub, no nothing, and this is the only way to organize it, and same with money. Yeah, in a SEPA world, in particular instant SEPA world, you never would come up with a PayPal as a startup.
don't need it.
Have we got any
No.
questions out here? We've
Yeah,
got
what is
to
the
get
second-
changed out.
can I
Does
add
anybody
one-
want to put
what
their
is the
hand up
best
and
Can I
ask
add one more thing to
a
answer
question?
this question?
Yeah.
It's also,
You can.
no, it's also because people sometimes forget. Sometimes when you are in the States and you are in rural areas, they even don't have internet.
Yeah.
I couldn't live there.
And
It's like in
certainly
Germany.
not a mobile connection. It's horrible. So we walk around everywhere with our phones and we do banking. Now try that in the States, you will have no connection.
Yeah, and I don't find them to be extremely customer friendly. I think this is a part also of the educational system, that you have a lot of untrained people.
But that's the thing is, that's not just in the US.
That's right.
I was listening to a podcast by Louisa Beaumont from the Open Banking Initiative in the UK. She made a very good point. Most of the people here in the room, I'm sorry to say, you're not in a financial services company. You made a point. You're in a financial product company.
Absolutely.
Because you just try and sell me products. You don't actually give me a service.
Yeah.
Service,
And the
service
US is terrible for that as well.
totally. Service requires, by definition, the integration of the customer. This is service. The definition, so the scientific definition of service requires the integration of the customer. If I just sell something, this is not service.
Yeah, without a customer you can deliver a product. Without a customer
Exactly.
you cannot deliver a service.
This is why the hairdresser, for instance, is clearly a service approach. I did start you might remember that one of my older presentations, I started my business life in the hotel industry. Yeah. And I think this is, by the way, a good training for all bankers. Spend at least a year in a hotel and then go back to your bank.
Yeah, one of my friends is a private banker in Switzerland, and he started as a hotelier.
See?
I know, absolutely.
He acquired 5 hotels. No, this is not
No,
what
no,
I'm
no.
Right,
talking
we've got a
about.
Maybe in
question
the
up
future.
here. Well done, Megan.
Would you consider? Oh, wow. Would you consider then WeChat a service?
WeChat?
Yep. Or is it a product?
Well, it depends. So if WeChat is then distributing...
WeChat Pay.
Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And loans and so on, well, you know,
No, but WeChat itself is more than just payments, and it's more than just messaging.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do a lot in that app.
Yeah.
It's almost like a broker.
I would say it's more on the service side.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of then what is there anything to look towards as an actual service within financial services?
I think the service thing comes very much along with, if I may jump on that first, with that cultural topic I tried to raise. And this is what makes the difference for me, you know. This is what I'm normally in my presentations, I'm saying that if we in a bank, if we in the hotel would have had the same attitude like in a bank, we would have closed our restaurant at lunchtime because we are hungry, you know, as a waiter. And this is not working. And this is exactly the thing, you know. I think it's an attitude topic, first of all.
You've got an interesting question actually up here. If you don't have enough budget to do a full digital transformation, where would you start?
Small. No, but seriously, it's
Yeah.
to me that means that's a waterfall style mindset.
Yeah.
I need to do a big full transformation. No, you don't. Start with a
small.
small piece of value, and then go.
Nou ja, that's not exactly the same. People always say naturally you have to start small. Now, my background is in physics, and my observation is that when people say the word naturally, most often it is not natural. It's about stopping you from thinking further. And one of the things I've noticed quite often when people say, not naturally you have to start small, that's not always true. But later you say something else. You say, start with something small that delivers value. That I think that's another thing. So maybe indeed, if you say, well, I have a certain budget or a certain set of resources available, and I ran the incubator in Mamro, I also did not have, I had a couple of million a year, but not hundreds of millions. And of course, we try to find the high impact things. At the end of the day, what you hope is that will have an impact on the rest of the culture or the rest of the business in general. But it does not necessarily mean that we started small. In its environment, it was quite big. We started the first banking crowdfunding platform. We organized the first Bitcoin conference, and one was more successful than the other. Yeah, that's also why I set up this institute. But in its environment, it was relevant. It was significant. Otherwise, you cannot have. You cannot. Yeah.
I would even say, if it's too small, better do not start.
Yeah.
We've got a question over here. Sure. Carlo's got a question, I think.
Yeah, I have a question for Matthias, but also for the others. feeder, but also other started with the comms of the community. No? Do you foresee an evolution of this in the digital way? So can the customer do almost a bank by themselves or constructing together?
Yes, in general, absolutely yes. Does every customer want to do this? No. But the ones who are willing to integrate them into such a bank decision-making process, I think are the most, let me say, reliable and those customers with the highest customer retention. We did realize that customers that are active in the community have in average 3 to 7 times higher activity on the products. So this is a total different level of customer engagement. As said, I fully understand that a lot of people say, hey, communities, there's only a lot of BS going around and I don't want to have that. Fine. But for the ones who want to do this, I would really, again, go for that. We had it at DAB Bank. We had a community. This is why we did found Fido also on a community. Would I do this for any kind of next venture if useful in the B2C environment, retail? Yes, absolutely.
There's an example in the Netherlands of a bank called Bunk. They're a bit of a neobank. And in their community, they have a lot of the APIs available, right?
Yeah, exactly.
APIs. Yeah. And people go there and say, oh, by the way, I created this rule set. I created this new thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Without the bank even touching anything that they've done.
Yeah. That's really, we realized that people come up suddenly with the APIs and say, listen, I'm using this, and we did not even know you have an account, but we
So future of the bank can be without banks.
Well,
banking, but
regulatorily,
You need
of course,
banking, not necessarily banks.
yeah, but regulatorily, of course, we have to say that at the end of the day, the executive board is fully accountable for any kind of loan decision. We had also the idea that, we have a list of maybe loan applications from SMEs, and the users then decide to what company they want to give what loan, So that was, of course, very aggressive because, of course, the SME must stand that kind of heat in the community. Do you get a loan or not? We decide on that. It's getting a little bit of very much cooperativa then, but it's...
We pioneered with a hybrid model where somebody applied for a loan, then half of it was, 25% was done via crowdfunding, and if they got the funding via the crowdfunding, we said, well, that says something about our risk, because sometimes, and especially when you talk about startups, the bank didn't even understand anything what these guys were asking money for. But then, okay, if there are so many people who claim they understand and they put in some of their own money, that had impact on our risk model. And that's how you can also work together, of course.
Analog bank, there's clearly an interest in terms of just a little bit more about the analog. So do you want to just share that?
There's another one
now slipped up to the top there as well.
As I raised my thought about the analog bank, because I don't know, there's a natural reflex in me, can you say that in English? So a natural reaction that when everybody runs to the left, I immediately go to the right. I don't know why. Maybe it's too crowded, And one of the first Finnowates years ago, decades ago, Chris Skinner said, for instance, like the PFM was coming up and so on, and he on stage stood there and said, PFM is not for personal finance management, it's for pretty full marketplace. Yep. So again, I think when we walk into this data thing and we are also enthusiastic, this will cause an overreaction, as always. This is like the pendulum, and with the pendulum you have to develop. This is like regulation, is working exactly the same way. Crisis on this, you will be over-regulated, then it's swinging back and so on. And this is with the data thing, I think it will be exactly the same. So with my analog bank, first of all, I do not mean it's a tech-free bank. This is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it will be significantly cut off to any kind of digital interaction with the outside, which is part of the definition of digital. So it will be definitely free, and it shall be definitely free of any potential of being compromised, attacked, or whatever way influenced or depending on an outside infrastructure, for instance. Why is that to me important? We could talk about cash, for instance, versus digital currencies. I'm a strong believer in cash. Why? Because I have no tech background, but I'm a little bit techish now after all those years. it's for me, it's my fallback, you know, this is
Yeah.
like my external hard drive I have for my data, is my cache. What happens, you know, if we have no cache and the backbone is breaking down, what happens? You will have a civil war on the streets in 3 days. This is it.
Oh, I mean, you have that in terms of, you know, when problems occur. TSB as an example would
Yeah,
be one.
exactly.
You know, there's been many, many UK banks that have had problems. All of a sudden, you've just paid for your groceries and you're about to walk out, but actually when you go to pay for it, the system's down, you can't
Yeah.
pay for it.
That-
You
that
paid
would
for
be
fuel
nice.
or
However,
whatever.
we already passed, in that sense, the point of no return.
Is it?
If the backbone breaks down now, we don't have
Yeah,
enough cash to
I know,
solve
I know,
the
but
problem.
at least I could go for, let me say, a kind of workaround in the supermarket until the
But there are
supermarket is
places now,
empty, you know.
there are
but-
places now that are reacting against having no cash. I think in Philadelphia, they've, the local community have said, you cannot have a shop that does not take cash.
Yeah.
So
And I find that to be
Unacceptable.
very reasonable, and this is nothing to do with a counter-revolution, so
No, no.
to say. So again, this is why I'm saying we need to think of analog concepts in banking, because what happens if the most important source of our economical life and the most important, one of our most important backbones of society stability, access to wealth and money, is breaking down? I'm scared of that day.
Right, we've got time for one more question if you've got it out there. You failed me. Maybe a
Also
last
scared.
word. Maybe a last word from each of you in terms
Talk
of
bankers
what
that
this future.
can't invoice.
You know, a last sentence from each of you about the future of distribution. Connell,
I'm still thinking.
Paul.
I do believe in this concept of customer-driven banking. And I think the tools will become available. You talk about bank, we talk about this key, we talk about, just look at the App Store, the cost of entrance becomes lower and lower and lower. That, I think, is the very good point of the technology. But I also do foresee, and we see it already now, it is being discussed very many times already in the media recently, we will see the breakdown of the large organizations. We will bring back the power back to where it belongs, to the individuals.
Yeah.
That's the only sustainable solution.
Connell?
No, I mean, on that point, I think, I mean, I'm young, I also have a bit of a biased opinion, obviously, but I do think experience is king. And who drives the experience? Customer at the end of the day. There was a question before, I think it was from this table about, you know, should I do XYZ lifestyle banking? Ask your customer. That should be the first place that you go, right? Don't ask us. Go speak with your customer.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's yeah, cash is nice. Analog banks are nice, but it's not convenient.
Yeah, well.
So that's the. I think it'll ultimately go to wherever is the most convenient. If it's a bank, it'll go to the bank. If it's a telco, telco. If it's
They're not
something
worried
else,
about who
something else.
supplies it, as long as they give them
Yeah.
the service and the experience.
Exactly.
And those memories, quite frankly.
Right, so
Final word.
final word, I think in particular retail customers must understand that a banking license and security is worth something. So we cannot move on with this kind of priceless or cost-free, I think is the better word in English, cost-free approach. This is definitely not working. We banks must educate them, or we're going to go into really strongly split way, like saying, okay, this is a cost-heavy but secure way, and this is maybe a less secure way, a more data-open way, but this is for free. Again, we come back to the old e-commerce rule. If it's for cost-free, you are the product. So I think this is a rule set we also will face in banking.
If I may add to that one, that's
A last word.
That's going to happen with the internet as a whole. By the way, I see the rise of a parallel internet where we don't have the. I mean, just a very small thing. Why is sending an email free? You get a service and you get it for free. What do you get? Spam, phishing, and so on. If you would say sending an email will cost you 1/100th of a cent, of a dollar cent, we couldn't care less. It would cost us maybe $1, $2, $3 a year. But if you were spamming and you send out 100 million mails at a time,
Be a little bit pricey.
and I asked with the architects, is that possible in the current internet? Actually, it is. But we don't do it because of very vague reasons. Now, there's a parallel internet emerging where they want to solve that type of problems, and I think that's where the bank should be.
Absolutely.
All right, well, very grateful for your contributions, Dave. Very valuable. So thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.